Alright, I'm hungry. I've been sitting at my desk for quite a while now, and it'll probably be a week before I record the rest of this video, so what better time to wrap up Week 5 with Flatland Flat Sands versus Mobile Mudkips. The set played shortly after I uploaded last week's video, I think. In any case, they got their extension and they got it done, so last set of Week 5 here. And as I was saying during the Week 5 video, well, I feel like I alluded to it, but I didn't say it very clearly. It really seems like we're starting to see with a lot of these teams what Pokemon the coaches are most comfortable bringing each week, as we once again see the Mudkips bringing Talonflame with the two ground types in Crocodile and Garchomp, both able to throw off a strong Earthquake if they want, which is very powerful into some of the biggest threats on the Flat Sands team in the Typhlosion, the Jolteon, and we don't see it here, but the Lucario as well. And then the Fairy Dragon Steel Core with Garchomp, Scizor, and Gardevoir is something we've also seen very often from the Mudkips. Gardevoir also notably being able to sit next to an Earthquake user because it has telepathy. So either Talonflame or Gardevoir is immune to a partner's Earthquake. And yeah, they can pivot around with Scizor, they can throw off priority bullet punches, they can fill in the core with Gardevoir. It's very solid composition. They also have the Decidueye here this week. I'm not necessarily sure what that's for in this matchup, although, I mean, it's certainly not strong into the Typhlosion, at least before Terra, though it does get Sucker Punch, I think. Non-stab, though. It might be helpful into the Mudsdale with that Leaf Blade crit rate. In any case, on the Flat Sand side, we also see some favorites here. They have the duo of Typhlosion and Whimsicott, which, of course, has been strong in both... has been a terror to this league so far, and also strong in Regulation H at some times. We see the Jolteon here, maybe not the strongest into the two ground types, but with Terastallization, it of course could flip that matchup on its head and outspeed anything on the other side, at least before Tailwind. We see the Mudsdale, which is able to tank those physical attacks very well and set up with Stamina, the Clefable here to support his team, and they really seem to like bringing the Scraggy. I feel like we've seen a lot of that lately, and of course it has Intimidate, which also can help them into a physical-heavy game plan. So I could see Scraggy and Mudsdale putting in a lot of work here. They, of course, can match Tailwind with the Whimsicott, and maybe there's some kind of creative Typhlosion or Jolteon set that can put in a lot of work. But, yeah, I feel like on the Mudkip side, the Mudsdale is probably the biggest threat here. I don't necessarily know how they beat it. They might need the Gardevoir to put in some work there, because otherwise they have nothing but physical Pokemon. But definitely an interesting matchup on both sides, and a lot will come down to what kinds of creative choices these coaches have made, so let's just jump in and see. As we get Talonflame and Garchomp leading against Scraggy and Jolteon. So the Garchomp takes an Intimidate right away, but it will be faster than Jolteon once Tailwind goes up, if that's how they decide to play this. Oh, but they fake out the Talonflame and just Thunderbolt it, and I guess it didn't go for a flying attack because... No, actually, wait. The Fake Out turns off the priority on its flying moves. That's it. They probably did try to set Tailwind up, but... yeah, Gale Wings only gives priority to flying-type moves at full HP, so landing the Fake Out also means that it doesn't have the priority. Talonflame is slower than Jolteon. Jolteon has, like, 4 points more base speed. This does, of course, mean they ignore the Garchomp, so it's possible that they're sacking Jolteon to an Earthquake here, or maybe it has a Focus Sash. In any case, they're definitely comfortable with denying the Tailwind in this position for whatever reason, as we see the Earthquake go off, and it's actually Shookaberry Jolteon. Takes that pretty well. Scizor in now, and the Jolteon's running Alluring Voice. I didn't even know it got that move, but that does a lot of damage to Garchomp, and of course Crocodile would also be weak to it. Jolteon does drop to a U-turn here. Decidueye in. Scraggy drops the Garchomp with an Ice Punch, and is not even KO'd by the rough skin damage. So, Alluring Voice Jolteon into Ice Punch Scraggy, that Garchomp does not look so safe sitting there on the field anymore, and denying the Tailwind really did give a ton of offensive momentum to the Flat Sands. As we see the Clefable come in now, and the Scizor's back. But here's the Mudsdale, and unless the Decidueye can put in work against Mudsdale, that Leaf Blade does a lot. It does give a stamina boost, and we see the Flamethrower Clefable KOing the Scizor. The coverage moves really coming through for the Flat Sands here. Terragrass Mudsdale takes that Leaf Blade really well at +1 after the Intimidate. And they KO Scraggy here. but drop to Heavy Slam. I'm probably thinking Scraggy would be able to KO Decidueye, even if they could get rid of the Mudsdale here, but also the Decidueye might be choice locked. Hang on. I think we only ever saw the Decidueye click Leaf Blade. Yeah. And certainly without a crit, it wouldn't KO Mudsdale here. I don't know if it would with a crit, but maybe KOing Scraggy was the only thing they could do at that point because they were locked into Leaf Blade. In any case, we see the coverage moves coming through for the Flat Sands. Denying Tailwind really shut down that whole offensive mode. I think Mudkips probably need the Gardevoir in Game 2, as the Terra Grass Mudsdale is just too hard to break, or so it seems right now. And the Clefable could potentially have a lot more tools to support it, but we'll see what happens in Game 2 here, as we get Scizor leading now with Crocodile, okay, against Scraggy and Jolteon. Both of those Pokemon will get intimidated. The Flat Sands, by the way, very often, I've called out in the past that they often start a Game 2 with the Pokemon they didn't bring in Game 1, so if they did that in this case, it would be Whimsicott Typhlosion, but they are just running back the same lead. And, I mean, maybe this is the opponent's adjustment for a Whimsicott Typhlosion lead. That would make some sense to me, but these Pokemon look very vulnerable into Jolteon, especially with both of their attack stats dropped. So, good lead there from the Flat Sands, just running the lead back. Jolteon actually switches out here as the Mudsdale comes in, and that makes sense. Both of these Pokemon are going to have a lot of trouble against Mudsdale. We do see the Assault Vest there knocked off by the Crocodile, so that might mean that the Gardevoir has a chance of doing something to Mudsdale here, as it does just switch right in. Of course, it is vulnerable to Heavy Slam, but it takes that Body Press very well. Now the Clefable comes in. Mudblast? Mudsdale narrowly takes that Moonblast. We might see a Heavy Slam into Gardevoir here. Scizor might have been able to KO Mudsdale if it doubled up, but instead it goes for the U-turn into what's now a Clefable and pivots out. So they might have missed a chance to KO Mudsdale here, as it does knock out Gardevoir. It's at +2 defense. It might take another hit, especially after the Intimidate support from the Scraggy. We see Terra Steel Scizor just go right for a Bullet Punch into the Scraggy slot, still not targeting the Mudsdale, and having turned off its Bug typing, it drops to a super effective Body Press. They do get Tailwind up in this game, though, but Scraggy has its Fake Out available, uses it into Crocodile. Mudsdale is now KO'd. Talonflame Brave Bird does finish it off, but again, it got that other KO, and it got a second KO into the Scizor before it went down, so it's already put in a ton of work. And here's Clefable, and my guess is they'll stall out the Tailwind and win with Jolteon. Maybe they'll KO Crocodile with a Moonblast or something first. The Citrus Berry keeps Clefable reasonably healthy, and we see the cute Charm again activating to make it harder for the Talonflame to move. And sure enough, there's the Moonblast into Crocodile. Jolteon can beat Talonflame in the endgame now. It's the last turn of Tailwind. Scraggy will go down here, but Clefable just heals itself, and yeah, Jolteon can come in, easily finish the job. As it does. So, yeah, the Gardevoir, I think the Gardevoir was important to bring into the Mudsdale, but by not doubling up, they let the Mudsdale survive just long enough to claim 2 KOs, and there was nothing to handle Jolteon and Clefable in the endgame. So, interesting teams on both sides and a well-played set, but in the end, the Flat Sands take this and continue their undefeated run into, I believe, a showdown with the other undefeated team, the Dallas Dragapults, which, unless there's another extension or something, should be showing up later in this very video. Let's cut to Week 6. Week 6 is here. Actually, really, Week 6 is in the past. I'm recording later than usual because I was away for Thanksgiving, but you know, Week 6 still happened. We still have to cover it. A lot happened this week, and it starts with, well, I was going to say some trades, but really with our usual weekly check of the standings. And we can see here the Alaskan Absols are very much in the playoff hunt. At this point, in this clump of tied teams here, one game, not one set, one game back from being tied for a playoff spot. As we see some teams still running away from the pack and some teams still clumped together. Very much almost anyone's game to get into the playoffs still. There might be like a team or two eliminated at this point, but with 3 weeks left in the season, almost everyone is still in it, and there's still a lot of surprises that could happen as we close this thing out. You also see at the top here, we have our 2 undefeated teams, the Flatland Flat Sands and the Dallas Dragapults through 5 weeks. no longer, after week 6, only one of them is undefeated. And that's not even a spoiler because, as I've been saying, they played each other. We're going to cover that after our Alaskan Absols set. 2 trades to report this week. I think there weren't any last week, right? But that may have been a blip after all, as the trade activity has ramped up again. First, we have the Sandshrews dropping Espeon and picking up Florges. I haven't thought a lot about this one, other than being like a little bit vaguely sad, because Espeon is a Pokemon that I like a lot, and I always want to see it do well, but it seldom does. But we saw them try... Well, did we see them try expanding Force Psy-Spam stuff with Indeedee and Espeon, or did I just think they were going to do that? I think it kind of showed up in the first couple weeks. And I don't think we really saw it amount to much of anything. On the other hand, Florges gives them some more bulk, especially on the special side. It gives them a Fairy type to combine with Copperajah and Dragonair, maybe if they want to get away from the Venusaur Sun mode some more. It's just like a solid, good Pokemon with a good type that they didn't have yet, so it kind of makes sense to stick it onto this team late in the season and see what they can do with it. But the real fireworks this week are in a coach trade, a 2 Pokemon each coach trade, as the Arctic Articunos have sent Sinistcha and Skarmory to the Azure Bay Chatots for Chandelure and Venomoth. This is a trade that was making more sense to me as I was thinking about it, actually, as I was making this image, compared to earlier. So, on the Articunos side, their team initially started with a pairing of Sinistcha with Blood Moon Ursaluna, right? Sinistcha being able to set Trick Room for Ursaluna, and then also redirect threats away from it, especially fighting-type attacks, because Ursaluna is weak to fighting and Sinistcha is immune. Same goes for water attacks, actually. Not grass as much, because grass types are immune to Rage Powder, but you never know. And then Skarmory, I don't necessarily know what plan they had for Skarmory. They only brought it last week, and I think they were pretty unimpressed with its performance. So it made sense that they were trying to get rid of it going into this week. Reckless Trico, and by the way, coach of the Arctic Articunos, Reckless Trico. You can check out their channel for their thoughts on this trade and all their sets this season. Again, that's Reckless Trico. Talked in the Discord a little bit about how, although Sinistcha was good on paper with Blood Moon or Ursaluna, it did kind of force a Trick Room mode sometimes when they're not really that comfortable playing Trick Room, and so it was kind of an awkward fit for their particular playstyle. And in that sense, I think this trade makes a lot of sense. Chandelure gives them a much stronger offensive Ghost type, and while it is able to set Trick Room, it also has the flexibility to play in faster modes. And then Venomoth is still able to redirect fighting type attacks away from Ursaluna, not into an immunity, but into a double resistance, being a bug and poison type that gets Rage Powder. Plus, it can play in faster faster modes. It brings a little more offensive presence than Skarmory. It has a viable special attack stat it can set up with Quiver Dance. It also can spread status with things like Sleep Powder. So they just get 2 Pokemon that are much stronger than the ones going out, while still bringing together the pieces that they wanted on this team. Fighting immunity, fighting resistance, redirection, Trick Room if they want it. Makes a lot of sense. I haven't thought about it as much on the Chatots side, but in general I don't understand the Chatots team quite as much as the Articunos one, which is not a criticism, it just doesn't necessarily, match the way that I play, and I can't always see the vision. The Chatots... Oh, I can see the Sinistcha. So some of their game plans have run through the Gyarados and the Ludicolo. I can see the Sinistcha certainly protecting Gyarados from electric-type attacks that are targeting into it. So that's a big plus right there, and something the Chandelure can't do. Sinistcha is maybe, Chandelure is a Trick Room setter, but Sinistcha is maybe a safer one in some situations to pair with Hatterene and King Gambit. So I can kind of see the vision for that. I don't know what it is that they're going to do with the Skarmory, and I'm not privy to the negotiations that went into this trade. I don't know what kind of messages they sent to each other. Maybe it's possible that the Chatots were interested in getting Sinistcha to pair with Gyarados and with a Hatterene King Gambit mode, and the Articunos coach said, well, okay, but then you have to take Skarmory off my hands if I'm going to accept this. Entirely possible that that's what happened there, but in any case... yeah, I don't know necessarily how Skarmory fits onto this team, but we'll see if they do anything with it in these last 3 weeks. And with those 2 trades on the books, very active trading season across the board so far. we will go ahead and cut to the Week 6 sets, starting with the Alaskan Absols. That said, it is going to be commentary over a replay for the Absols this time, as I didn't play this set. Our opponent, the Marvelous Bridge Malamars, and I both had gaps in our availability, and our availability did not overlap. So my co-coach stepped up to take this one, and built a team themselves that they were comfortable with. I did give feedback on the team at some points, and so I am familiar with some of the decisions that went into it. But you can see here, what do I remember? Well, there's some strong offense into the Malamars team with the Primarina, Hitmonchan. I believe this is Assault Vest Incineroar with Close Combat and U-Turn to help cover for the Dark and Psychic types on the other side. The Dusclops is here in its usual Trick Room Setter mode. We got strong offense in Baxcalibur. And then we talked about bringing Reuniclus to this set, but the Malamars have so many Pokemon that are so strong into Reuniclus that I thought it was worthwhile to give Serena a try instead. But I honestly don't remember what Serena set my co-coach landed on. I didn't really give any feedback on that one besides suggesting that it might be a good Pokemon in this matchup. On the Malamars side, so we see the Greedent again, which is cool, and it's paired with the Slowbro. I believe they said in the Discord that was meant to kind of be an answer to our Trick Room mode, having some strong Trick Room Pokemon themselves, which makes a lot of sense. The Metagross is very good into Baxcalibur, into Hitmonchan, into Primarina to an extent, so that's definitely a Pokemon that my co-coach had to be aware of in this matchup. I'm not necessarily sure what the Mightyena is here for, though Intimidate is good into a few of our Pokemon here. But yeah, the main thing I think that the Malamars have to watch out for is the Primarina. Slowbro could maybe help to slow it down. Metagross can be an offensive threat into it, but most of these Pokemon look like they just lose to Primarina unless they have some kind of tech to overcome it. That said, they've done pretty well here at we have a few Pokemon that are able to exploit weaknesses in this team. Primarina is one. One of the reasons that I picked up Hitmonchan when I took over the Absols was that I saw this matchup coming with the Greedent and all the Dark types. But I think the Malamars have done pretty well at covering their weaknesses and how they've built this, at least at preview. But we'll see what happens as we go into the sets. We see Bisharp and Malamar leading against Dusclops and Primarina. Okay. Oh, is the Dusclops? Oh, it's Pressure Dusclops. I thought it was about to activate Frisk and give us some information. I did not remember that it had Pressure. They just go right for the Dark Terra. This was something that I really liked when we talked about the team beforehand. The Dark Terra being able to cover for the many Dark-type attacks that are probably coming into Dusclops, of course, turning its weakness into resistance, and then also an immunity to Psychic attacks from Metagross and Slowbro and Malamar, in case you have to worry about those. And the way the Dusclops just terrestrializes right there seems like maybe they are going for a Trick Room game plan immediately, which could make sense into this Malamar, which is a Pokemon that tends to play a little on the faster side and try to get going with its setup, but we'll see what happens here. The Bisharp goes right for a Poison Jab into Primarina and gets the Poison, so that's a good start for the Malamars there. Missing the Psycho Cut. Well, no, they didn't miss. They targeted it into an immunity. So they don't manage to do anything to Dusclops there. Primarina hits right back with Dazzling Gleam, knocking Malamar down to its sash. We've seen that Primarina is slower than both of these Pokemon. Although if they have Sucker Punch on Bisharp or something, then they can still take out Primarina if it tries to just go for an attack here. We see the poison damage already, putting Primarina on a timer. Primarina does switch out to Incineroar, and something I forgot to mention at preview is that this is Blaze Incineroar on this team. I can't take any credit for this idea. My co-coach saw it, and my co-coach included it in the first paste that they sent to me, and I thought it was cool when I saw it. This is not a very good team to run Intimidate into, right? The Malamar has Contrary, so it gets a boost from Intimidate. The Bisharp probably has Defiant, so it gets a boost from Intimidate. The Metagross, which is their most dangerous physical attacker, ignores Intimidate. If they get the Greedent going, Intimidate can slow it down, but it's a slow way to do that. So yeah, we decided, well, my co-coach decided, and then we both agreed that Blaze Incineroar was probably just the safest way to do it this week. That Intimidate would bring more headache than it was worth. And you see it pay off immediately here as Incineroar switches into both of the Pokemon that are buffed by Intimidate. Come to think of it, that's probably in part a team-building decision that Bryce made coaching the Malamars, trying to look for those Intimidate buffs with these two Pokemon, but the Blaze Incineroar avoids that. Dusclops KOs Bisharp with a Nightshade, and takes that superpower from Malamar pretty well. Miraidon comes in here. It can safely run Intimidate, which will weaken the Incineroar, but goes, I guess, for a Sucker Punch into Dusclops and eats that Will-O-Wisp burn instead, as Incineroar finishes Malamar off, and we see Hitmonchan in the back. So they really did just bring all of their strongest Pokemon into the Psychic and Dark types on the opposing side, leaving Baxcalibur and Serena behind this game. Dusclops then gets the burn on Metagross as an explosion KOs neither of our Pokemon. Miraidon, of course, protecting to survive it, but Miraidon is now alone after the explosion, as Hitmonchan is able to take that burn Sucker Punch and KO back, wow, with a Helping Hand boosted Mach Punch, just deleting almost all of Miraidon's HP. And that was a pretty quick game there. The Dusclops, the Will-O-Wisp Dusclops, I didn't even really talk about at preview, but with so many physical attackers on the other side, everything on this team except Slowbro is relying on physical attacks to do damage. Once the Dusclops got Trick Room up, it just went crazy with the Will-O-Wisp, and from there, Bryce didn't have the damage needed to win. So, pretty solid Dusclops game there from co-coach Mario Fan. But we'll go now to game 2 and see what happens there, what adjustments the coaches make, as we do see the Slowbro come out. I think it makes sense. I think you kind of need the Slowbro at this point in this set. And they've brought the Greedent with it as well, so they might try to... Again, I think they are trying to answer the Trick Room mode there, Trick Room mode here, but also if you get Greedent going, if you avoid the Will-O-Wisp burn from Dusclops, maybe keep some pressure on Dusclops now that you know it's Terra type. If you, you don't have to worry about Intimidate from Incineroar because it doesn't have that. I think the Greedent could make a lot of sense here. We do see the Dusclops in the lead slot again, this time with Baxcalibur. So we see it's Terra Ground Greedent. Baxcalibur is going to go straight for a Helping Hand boosted attack, and it's a Glaive Rush that just one-shots the Greedent. So Greedent will not be getting any setup this game. I don't know whether it tried to set up that turn, but Mario Fan smartly just denying that immediately as the Slowbro protects and grabbing an early advantage there. Incineroar comes in on the Malamar's superpower and takes more than half before Malamar even gets the boost. And we see Slowbro set the Psychic to Rain. Huh. Maybe trying to stop an Ice Shard from Baxcalibur so that, to get it out of its Glaive Rush state. I actually don't know. If you use Ice Shard, if you use it to move unsuccessfully after the Glaive Rush, does it still get you out of the Glaive Rush state with the extra damage? I don't know that mechanic, but they may have thought that something like that was coming out. Alternatively, the Slowbro might just be trying to boost its own Expanding Force by setting up the manual Psychic Terrain. Maybe at this point with the Greedent gone, they're looking to win the game with Slowbro after a Trick Room setup that they might still be expecting. I don't know. But Dusclops gets the burn on Malamar here, and Slowbro is still under a lot of pressure, just protecting, as Malamar doesn't do a whole lot with that Rock Slide after the burn, takes a ton from Incineroar's U-turn. Primarina gets in, here's the Trick Room. We see the Terra Fairy Primarina, like I ran last week, to just maximize its Fairy-type damage, and that Expanding Force from Slowbro is just not doing enough. Really into either Pokemon, as it takes a ton from Primarina's Terra Fairy boosted Dazzling Gleam. It's forced to protect again. Metagross is in here. It's probably going to take a burn. Okay, they actually went for the Nightshade to KO Slowbro, which does survive with the Protect, but Primarina then protects on the Metagross's Iron Head, so no offensive headway made by either side here. This time we see the burn on the Metagross. Slowbro still can't get a KO with the Expanding Force, just not hitting as hard as they need into these two bulky Pokemon. And wow, after the burn, Metagross's Iron Head still doesn't KO the Dusclops at that low HP. And Primarina is able to close this out with a Hyper Voice. So really well-timed plays throughout with the Dusclops there. With the Trick Room able to get Primarina going into a bunch of Pokemon that don't stand up very well to it defensively. And then also just Dusclops spreading Will-O-Wisp around was so powerful into this team, especially with the Dark Terra in Game 1. But yeah, the burns were really hard for the Malamars to overcome, and I think their game plan made a lot of sense. I think they prepped well. I think they made some bold plays where they needed to here, but the burns were so much for this heavy physical attacking team to deal with. I think you needed to see more of a balanced offense, or maybe like a Fire Terra somewhere, or even a Lumberry. And then the Baxcalibur one-shotting the Greedent turn 1 was also kind of a turning point. But really solid game from my co-coach there, and we have now gotten the Alaskan Absols to 500, 3-3. Not at all a sure thing to make the playoffs even now, but very much in the playoff picture. With 2 weeks left in the season, an Alaskan Absols playoff run is entirely possible, though we'll still have to work to try to make it happen. Up next, I always say that I do the other sets in chronological order, the order in which they were played, and that order will not let us down this time, as the actual first set played this week was between the two teams at the top of the standings, the Flatland Flat Sands and the Dallas Dragapults. The Flat Sands here, we don't see the Hisuian Typhlosion into the opposing rain team. Instead, we get an interesting mix of Pokemon. The Whimsicott here supporting the likes of Honchkrow, Mudsdale, and Jolteon. So we could see something like beat up Stamina into a Hawlucha mode. They didn't bring Hawlucha, but of course they could have. We might see Jolteon trying to outspeed and KO the rain attackers with electric attacks. We might see like a Sucker Punch Honchkrow trying to shut Basculegion down. The Scraggy makes a lot of sense with the Intimidate into a lot of physical attackers on the other side. And then I don't know what the Toxapex is here for, but it might well be their best bet to kind of wall, I don't know, something on the opposing side. It might be able to... It might be a partial answer to a poison-based game plan from the Overquill, which again isn't here, but the Dragapults have been using a lot. Or maybe it's engineered to wall Basculegion, maybe even get a Baneful Bunker poison into it or something. So a lot of interesting possible choices and modes there. On the Dragapult side, we do see Pelipper and Basculegion, but again, some of their usual friends are not here. Rillaboom is here, threatening strong grass damage, possibly with priority into the likes of Jolteon and Mudsdale. We see the Donphan, which I don't know what that's going to do. It obviously can be an offensive threat to something like Lucario, Hisuian Typhlosion, if it can get a hit off, which it probably can with Sturdy, and Toxapex, so it's there to cover for some threats, I'm sure. And it probably is... I mean, those two Pokemon are both pretty good answers to Jolteon, so they might well be important in this matchup. The Raichu also can help protect his teammates from the Jolteon's electric attacks, as well as just, you know, land a Fake Out into Whimsicott or something, make some disruptive plays. And then the Riolu, we'll see what the Riolu does. I think of Riolu as a coaching bot, but we've actually seen it make some plays beyond that so far in this season and get some KOs and whatnot. In any case, as we dive into it, we see Pelipper and Raichu lead against Whimsicott and Honchkrow. So I don't know what's going to happen here. I'll just watch it play out as the Mudsdale switches in right in front of the Pelipper. Maybe thinking the Pelipper is going to go for a Tailwind or like a Hurricane into Whimsicott even. Maybe maybe they're trying to... We'll find out in a second, but maybe they're trying to get a beat-up set up here and then terrasilize the Mudsdale around its weakness and try to roll through the opposition. As actually we see Whimsicott go straight for Sunny Day, which makes a lot of sense into this rain team. There is no beat-up setup into the Mudsdale, but it does get a stamina boost from that Icy Wind. Rillaboom comes in on the Whimsicott's Energy Ball, takes that pretty nicely. The Pelipper is still going for Icy Wind, so it might be locked in. Still boosting the Mudsdale, although the damage is starting to add up. We don't see a Terra from the Mudsdale so far, as High Horsepower also targets into the Rillaboom. Rillaboom coming in on 2 resisted attacks there. Honchkrow is back, takes a fair bit from the Grassy Glide, and then a bunch more from the Icy Wind. The Mudsdale is still being slowly worn down here. It still hasn't shown a Terra type. And actually it's Life Orb Pelipper, I've only just noticed, although it's been showing every turn. But it seems to feel pretty safe to just keep spamming Icy Wind here. And, you know, I guess if it has Weather Ball, then a Fire attack is not that useful here. But in any case, the Icy Wind damage is adding up, and it's hard for the Flat Sands to get anything going into this speed control. The Rillaboom gets worn down a bit too, but still on the field so far. Might have gone for a Grassy Glide into something, but gets taken out by Honchkrow's Sucker Punch. We see Honchkrow get the Moxie boost. So a couple of different slow setup options for the Flat Sands, but the Pokemon are still being worn down. Donphan is in here, but after taking the Stone Edge from the Mudsdale, it does not have Sturdy intact. We see the Pelipper come back, set the Rain, go out to Raichu. Of course, the Whimsicott is not on the field. Honchkrow dropping to an Ice Shard. A lot of priority flying around so far in this set. As Donphan takes that Body Press pretty well. And we see Scraggy is the last Pokemon for the Flat Sands, so they really are kind of counting on Mudsdale to win this game, I would think. And Dragapult's playing around that pretty well. Now we finally see the Steel Terror on the Mudsdale, so It resists flying from here, but not and ice, notably, but not a water attack from Pelipper or an electric attack at this point from Raichu. So we might be able to kind of see why they took some time to go for the Terra. They also might just not have been rushing the commitment into it, which is, you know, a habit that I need to work on sometimes. But in any case, Scraggy drops to Hurricane. They'll get Whimsicott in here. They can change the weather one more time. The Pelipper is not KO'd, though, by that body press. And actually, Raichu KOs Whimsicott. So I guess Whimsicott must have gone for an attack there, maybe an energy ball. Mudsdale is the only Pokemon left on the flat sand side here in Game 1. Knocks Raichu down to its Focus Sash, but is just slowly taking damage. Well, not so slowly with the rain-boosted Weather Ball. And yeah, so the Dragapults did some smart switching around there with the Rillaboom, Raichu, and Pelipper. But the Flat Sands game plan seemed very focused on the Mudsdale, and the Mudsdale was never really comfortable on the field against that Pelipper. So although it was able to survive some turns, get some boosts, deal out some damage, smart pivoting from the Dragapults meant that Mudsdale was never able to take over the game. And in the end, once Honchkrow was gone especially, there wasn't much chance for it to win. So I think you have to see a different mode from the Flat Sands in Game 2, but we'll see what they do here. As we see Riolu now leading with Basculegion on the other side, the two Pokemon we didn't see in Game 1. This time against Whimsicott and Mudsdale. Again, that is what they led last game, right? No, they switched the Mudsdale in Game 1. This time they just lead with Mudsdale immediately, but they switch it out to Toxapex in front of the Basculegion. We see Terra Ice Basculegion as Riolu sets the manual Rain Dance. The Wave Crash doesn't do very much to Toxapex, but the Basculegion takes the Energy Ball from Whimsicott after the Terra. So Riolu running the manual Rain Dance gives them a second Rain Setter into Sunny Day strats from the Whimsicott. Smart adjustment to this team, and a great use for Riolu in general on this Rain team. As we see, they're not at all dependent on Pelipper to get weather up quickly. Basculegion goes out to Raichu here on the Sunny Day, and Riolu lands a big Poison Jab into the Whimsicott, doing a lot of damage. It's not going to take another of those. Toxapex poisons Riolu, but, I mean, at the point where you're poisoning Riolu, like, yeah, well, it's not even going to be KO'd this turn. It takes that Moonblast from Whimsicott. It'll drop to poison damage on its next turn. As we see, they just trade weather moves back and forth here. But at the point where you're investing this much into KOing Riolu, it really feels like you're behind in the set. But that may be what they have to do. As we see a Sunny Day and a Rain Dance, Riolu not backing down, not blinking for 1 second, in its last turn on the field before it drops to poison damage, anticipates the weather changing and just changes it right back. And Raichu, we see KOing the Whimsicott with a Thunderbolt after the Riolu's Poison Jab forced the Steel Terra. So, Ninja Meerkat now has weather control for the rest of the game. The Mudsdale is in. We've got the Scraggy intimidating Basculegion. Basculegion just goes right out to Pelipper. Here's a Toxapex again. They always seem to want Toxapex in front of Basculegion, but I mean, the Toxapex is pretty vulnerable in front of this Raichu, I think. Basculegion actually coming right back in. Scraggy KO'd by the Hurricane, so now the Flat Sands can't pivot anymore. As Basculegion does get poisoned by Toxapex, but it's going to be in front of Mudsdale now, in rain. Mudsdale has no Terra available. So much investment went into the Weather War on the Flat Sand side, using their Terra on the Whimsicott, and trading weather moves back and forth with the Riolu, and trying to KO Riolu, which took longer, I'm sure, than they would like. That a Mudsdale Wincon is just not available anymore, as it just drops to that Wave Crash from Basculegion. Basculegion takes a ton of damage, and okay, it doesn't quite drop to poison damage this time, but it doesn't matter. You don't need... Basculegion has done its job. And Pelipper and Raichu just have to finish Toxapex off now. Basculegion drops here, but then Raichu gets in. There's no Terra available. It actually goes for Endeavor, so all those bulky defensive stats that a Toxapex has don't matter at all when 1%, 1 HP, Focus Sash Raichu is able to just bypass those stats and knock it right down to 1, and then the Pelipper can finish it off with the normal Weather Ball. So really well played set from Ninja Meerkat here, as the Dallas Dragapults improved to 6-0 and are now the only undefeated team this season, taking sole possession of first place in the league and bumping the Flatland Flat Sands down to second. Just great weather control, pivoting, offensive gameplay in there from Ninja Meerkat. Keeping everything simple and very smooth, and yeah, taking control of the standings of the entire league as the last undefeated coach. Might feel like the week has peaked at that point, but of course there are still 6 more sets to go through. We move on next to Sandshrews versus Boston Biblically Accurate Maushold. The Sandshrews bringing their brand new Florges to this set. To what end, I'm not sure, although its special bulk could definitely be helpful into the possible size spam mode that we see on the other side. But the old core of Torkoal, Venusaur, Greninja, Hitmontop, and Electivire is here for one more go. As on the Maushold side, we see the Maushold, but also, again, possible size spam with Meowstic and Armarouge. Also possible Trick Room size spam stuff with the Slowpoke. And then I don't know what the Poltegeist is going to do. I don't really know what Poltegeist does generally other than like Shell Smash, try to knock things out with Shadow Ball. Poltegeist gets Tea Time, which does what? Force all Pokemon on the field to consume their berries right then? I think that's what Tea Time does. So if there's a Tea Time strat here, I'm very interested in that, but we'll just have to wait and see. As Sandshrews lead Venusaur Hitmontop against Armarouge and Meowstic. The other thing about Armarouge, of course, is that it gets Flash Fire, which means that it is a fire immunity that can come in on any kind of Eruption or Heat Wave or anything from Torkoal. In fact, will get a boost to its own fire attacks from taking that fire move with no damage. It's a fire immunity and a boost to its own fire attacks is what I'm saying. And then you can very safely run like Terra Grass on Armarouge. People did this all the time in like Regulation B, including me. I was an Armarouge size spam player for a while. And at that point, it's immune to a Sleep Powder from Venusaur. Of course, it's a massive offensive threat to Venusaur always. So it's very strong into a team like this. Terra Grass Armarouge also then has a lot of cover against Greninja if that wants to try to come in and revenge kill or something. Harder to do into that set. In any case, Armarouge will protect here, but Meowstic gets faked out. Oh, but it has the Covert Cloak, so it still sets its Manual Psychic Terrain. Torkoal comes in. Venusaur will get the Chlorophyll boost here, and will go Terra Ground, but we do see the Terra Grass Armarouge helping hand into, I'm guessing, an Expanding Force, as it takes that Earth Power really well after the Terra, and just KOs both Pokemon on the Sandshrews side. And there it is. I'm glad... I didn't know that was going to happen. I don't watch these before I record, and I'm glad I just riffed about Terra Grass Armarouge there, just as we see what it can do. Electivire goes for the knockoff and takes out the Meowstic. And, okay, that was going to be another huge Expanding Force that might have just won the game, with the Hitmontop not going for Wide Guard. But after the crit, I don't know whether the crit mattered, but I'm guessing it probably did. The Armarouge does not get a chance to get that second attack off. And on turn 3, this battle is already down to 2-on-2 as we see Maushold and Flapple in the back for Spooky. The Maushold just redirecting an Ice Punch away from Flapple. The Gravapple just KOs the Hitmontop, so yeah, and Maushold takes that Ice Punch pretty well, so okay, it takes a knockoff this time, but still standing, and Gravapple one-shots the Electivire too. Life Orb Flapple. Does it have Hustle? And we didn't see Gravity. Of course, the Meowstic could have Gravity. If it had gotten another turn, it might have set that. As it is, I'm guessing it's Hustle Flapple, and it could have missed those Gravapples, but Spooky had so much control there with the Follow Me Maushold taking hits from the Electivire pretty well, as the Electivire didn't show an Electric or Fighting attack there, interestingly. Maybe you don't risk an Electric attack in case they don't click. Maybe the Sandshrews are still trying to target the Flapple, so you don't risk an Electric attack because you don't want to hit the double resistance if they don't click Follow Me. I'm not saying they don't have an Electric attack, but yeah, Maushold had so much control there that the Flapple could even have afforded to miss one of those Gravapples. And I don't know what adjustments you make necessarily on the Sandshrews side in Game 2. I mean, maybe you Sludge Bomb the Armarouge this time, but let's just click right into it and see. As Greninja leads with Hitmontop against Armarouge and Meowstic again. But Armarouge... Oh, I was gonna say Armarouge can so safely just protect while Meowstic sets the terrain again, as we know that Meowstic has the Covert Cloak. But not even bothering this time. It looks like the Armarouge is going to attack immediately. Again, with the Grass Terra, it takes that Water Pledge from Greninja, no problem. As Hitmontop throws off a normal Terra Blast. I don't know what they were going for with that. Terra Blast, of course, not only normal type, but always a special attack if you haven't Terrassalized yet. Oh. Okay, he definitely thought that he terrestrialized. That's what happened there. I think that's gotten a couple people in this league this season. The most common way it happens, of course, is if you enter the move and then you cancel it, but you forget to click the Terror box again. So he went for the Dark Terror Blast into Meowstic, but he just messed up the input there. It happens to all of us sooner or later. It's definitely happened to me. But that does give the Meowstic a chance to set Gravity this time before it goes down. Armarouge will KO the Hitmontop, or the Greninja with Expanding Force, but the Terra Dark Hitmontop actually showing the immunity. But now Flapple gets in. This time it does have Gravity, but it just drops to an Ice Punch. Okay, hold on. Armarouge now going for Heat Wave, which would pick up the Dark-type Hitmontop but nicely, except it switched out. But that does a ton of damage to not only Electivire, but also the Florges, whose special bulk up and talking up all this time. Now we see the Maushold come in. We won't see the Flapple go crazy with Grav Apple this time, but it looks like Armarouge can probably just win the game, as it does KO both opposing Pokemon here. Maushold once again taking a knockoff with the Follow Me, and I don't think Hitmontop can turn this one around. Maushold will drop to Terra Blast, but Hitmontop, oh, not quite KO'd by the single target Heat Wave. Gets a close combat into Armarouge. Okay, so we see that the crit in Game 1 did matter. And if that had crit again this game, then the Sandshrews would actually have won Game 2. But instead, Armarouge is able to close this one out. Spooky pointing out that Psy Spam is pretty strong into the Sandshrews team, and I would say especially the Armarouge Psy Spam, where you can use Flash Fire to cover for the Grass Terra, much like people have done in VGC throughout Scarlet and Violet. We definitely saw a great showcase there of what it can do. And we'll move on to the next set, which is Azure Bay Chatots versus Miami Palafins. The Palafins bringing what looks like their typical rain mode, with the Clef Key probably setting manual rain for our Chaladon and Poliwrath. Hey, Poliwrath has had some VGC results lately, hasn't it, with a Swift Swim Choice Band set. And then, of course, the Noivern can get accuracy boosted Hurricane as well in rain. The Cryogonal... Okay, the Cryogonal could cover for like Gyarados and Ludicolo with Freeze Dry, which makes sense if you want to shut down the opponent's answers to your own rain. Also strong into the newly acquired Sinistcha on the Chatots side. And we'll see what the Lilligant is here to do. As on the Chatots side, I imagine Ludicolo is kind of here to be anti-rain to an extent. Magnezone might be engineered to deal with the Archaladon, being generally a Pokemon that's good at dealing with opposing Steel types. Doesn't match up super well into our Chaladon at face value, but you can run a special custom Terra type or something if that's the matchup you're trying to handle with that. Or it might help into the Poliwrath. Don't necessarily... Well, the Hitmon... I was going to say I don't know what the Hitmonlee is here for. It's probably a fighting type to threaten our Chaladon. And then we see some possible Trick Room stuff with the Hatterene, the King Gambit, and the new Sinistcha. No Skarmory, though. At least not this week. We see Hatterene and Hitmonlee lead against our Chaladon and Lilligant. Lilligant, of course, can, support our Chaladon with the Sleep Powder and also keep it healthy with Pollen Puff if they're running that. Hatterene takes a big Flash Cannon, but still gets Trick Room up, which is a fair bit of damage with that Dazzling Gleam. And they're just going for the Electro Shot. Do they have the Power Herb? They do not. No Power Herb, so the Electro Shot would have taken 2 turns, except Hitmonlee waking up in the clutch. I believe that's our first turn wake. Yep, it sure is. And landing the high jump kick. Always a scary attack to use, but we see now why some people go for it, as it just blasts that Archaladon off of the field. We actually see Lilligant set Rain Dance here, which is pretty cool. Not a Pokemon you associate with rain usually, but makes a lot of sense on this team. And the high jump kick coming through again. Just... like, I'm imagining this like it's the anime, and the Archaladon and Cryogonal now are both up against the wall at the far end of the battlefield in... You know what I mean? Like, they've been sent flying by that kick, crashed into the wall, they've left dents in their own shapes that will take ages to repair. Just sent flying off of the battlefield by this Hitmonlee. As Klefki comes in, gets the light screen, but it's going to get worn down. It's not even going to get worn down, it's just going to be deleted by the high jump kick. So that's 3 Pokemon that have crashed into the wall and left imprints, as the Hitmonlee has just sent all of them flying. And we go down to Game 2. Can Hitmonlee be stopped? Maybe we'll see the Noivern to try to deal with it. Maybe we'll see the Swift Swim Poliwrath. Maybe we'll see some cool Terra type. But, you know, until they prove otherwise, until the Palafins prove otherwise, Hitmonlee is kind of just running away with this so far. You see a Hatterene and Hitmonlee lead again against Klefki and Poliwrath. So, okay, Terra Poison on the Poliwrath too to resist a high jump kick. Klefki goes right for the Reflect. That makes a lot of sense, reducing the high jump kick damage. But I can see Poliwrath getting the rain support on the next turn. Hitmonlee actually goes for Upper Hand. What is going on there? The Poliwrath is not going to be running a priority attack. So it falls to the Klefki. Maybe they thought that Upper Hand can flinch into a Prankster support move, and maybe in fact it can't do that. I don't know how Upper Hand works. I wouldn't have guessed that Upper Hand would fail if they targeted the Klefki here. But I think it must be something like that. I think it must be the case that Upper Hand doesn't work into priority support moves, but they thought it did, which I might have thought too, so they tried it here. We'll look it up after the game. Poliwrath getting some good damage into the Hatterene with the Poison Jab, but we do see a problem here with the Poison Terra, as it's now vulnerable to Hatterene's Psychic attacks, while Hitmonlee is free to high jump kick the Klefki if it wants, although the Reflect will nerf that damage. And with the Trick Room going up, you probably don't want to give rain support to your Poliwrath anymore, at least not right now. Let's see, Hitmonlee actually switching out to Magnezone, makes sense, playing it a little more patiently. Hatterene actually targeting the Klefki instead of the Poliwrath, and dropping to a Waterfall. But Kingambit gets in here with Supreme Overlord, okay. You see Terra ground Magnezone, so it probably is meant in part to help deal with the Archaludon, but it also means it can't be paralyzed. Well, couldn't be paralyzed anyway as an electric type, but it still can't be paralyzed by Klefki's Thunder Wave, nor can Kingambit because of the Prankster Dark immunity. It also means that the Magnezone has some coverage into the Poison Poliwrath here. We see a Brick Break taking out the screens. That's a good tech. And Ground Terra Blast just KOs Poliwrath right away. Blasting into the ceiling this time, I guess, instead of the wall. Cryogonal comes in. Maybe it can help deal with the Ground Magnezone, but not if it can't take a Brick Break from Kingambit. And the rain comes up, I think, way too late. Terra Blast into Klefki. They still have a Pokemon left, right? Yeah, it's Archaludon. But Brick Break and Terra Blast is going to KO that. So, good set for fighting type attacks with the Kingambit Supreme Overlord boosted Brick Break coming through in the Trick Room mode, where the Hitmonlee high jump kick was not going to be as effective. And the Terra Ground Magnezone really well positioned there, really putting in a lot of work. Very solid win by these Urbate Chatots there. Yeah, and the Hitmonlee in Game 1 got me pretty excited for sure. I am going to take one of my signature Bulbapedia breaks to look up how Upper Hand works, see what might have happened there. Upper Hand is a priority of +3. If the target has selected a physical or special move with increased priority from +1 to +3 and the other chance to execute its move, Upper Hand will strike first, cause the target to flinch, otherwise Upper Hand will fail. So, okay, I think it is what I said. Let's get these ads out of here. Upper Hand doesn't work on status moves, and they probably didn't know that. I didn't know it either. Anyway, by closing that Bulbapedia tab, I've already opened the next set, which of course is Drago's Strongest Warrior versus Lightning Lancers. We see possible sand modes on both sides, the Tyranitar and the Hippowdon here. Hippowdon joined, of course, by Excadrill, which is an offensive threat to Tyranitar, but not necessarily to Corviknight or Gastrodon. We see a pretty typical sand mode from Drago here. I'm going to get pretty excited if the Grookey KOs the Crawdaunt, but I think more likely Grookey is here to turn off Psychic Terrain from the Indeedee. And yeah, the Corviknight can set up. I would think in this matchup, the Corviknight is a huge threat. The Gastrodon is actually pretty threatening into this Lancer's lineup too. And I always say when I see the Probopass that I don't know what that does. I actually do have some spoilers this week, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We'll just watch the games. Lancer's side, yeah, the Hippowdon Excadrill stuff makes decent sense, but it does have some exploitable weaknesses, so how have they covered those? The Crawdaunt, I don't know that the Crawdaunt helps them that much into Corviknight and Gastrodon either, plus it's weak to Comfey and Grookey. The Salamence is maybe a little better. It has to watch out for Comfey as well, and honestly also Corviknight, especially if it's running Intimidate into Mirror Armor. Maybe the Crabominable is their secret tech here. I have not yet had a reason to be a believer in the Crabominable, but I would like to find one, so maybe we will this week as we get into the games here. Comfey and Grookey against Excadrill and Indeedee. No sand on the field just yet. Grookey slower than Indeedee, winning terrain control. And of course, the Comfey's Floral Healing will also be boosted by grassy terrain, as will any priority Giga Drain coming from it if it has that. Comfey sets Tailwind here for its teammates. That's pretty cool. Hippowdon comes in. Excadrill will get the speed boost. But Comfey going down here means Drago gets a Pokemon in with the Tailwind still up. They get 2 Pokemon in, actually, thanks to the Grookey's U-turn. So we see Corviknight, and then Grookey just comes back. Grookey may be threatening Fake Out now while Corviknight starts to set up. We see Corviknight go right for the Fighting Terra, Terra Blast into Indeedee, trying to catch the Excadrill, but the Excadrill switched out. Hippowdon's high horsepower. Considering how much I've bashed Hippowdon for not doing much damage this season, that high horsepower doing half to the Grass-type Grookey, I know that Grookey's is baby, but still pretty good. Corviknight's going to switch out against the Indeedee as Grookey looks to do damage. Does some decent damage to Indeedee. Corviknight right back in. Not immune, of course, to that high horsepower as we see Trick Room come out from the Lancers. But actually, just as the Tailwind ends, this is beneficial to their slower Pokemon as we see here, but the Excadrill might have an awkward time with it if it's forced back in. But Corviknight going for the Terra Blast into Hippowdon means it doesn't get the KO on Indeedee there. The Excadrill can relax in the back, wait for its own Trick Room to wear off. Plus, we still don't know their 4th Pokemon, but in any case, Hippowdon doing more damage than you might expect in combination with Indeedee's Dazzling Gleam. And the Terra fighting Corviknight trying to catch the Excadrill with Terra Blast was a bold play, but as the Excadrill switched out, the Indeedee got in, set Trick Room, was able to throw off Dazzling Gleams. The Corviknight was kind of neutralized from there. Corviknight's natural Flying and Steel typing is, for the most part, I think, very strong in this matchup. So I think you want to save the Terra if you're Drago in the remaining games. Probably even Terrastallize a different Pokemon. But yeah, going for the Fighting Terra on Corviknight there, an aggressive call into the Excadrill, but it really backfired in this game. And we'll hopefully see them answer the Excadrill with a different way, or in a different way in Game 2. Maybe we will see the Gastrodon this time. I do think Gastrodon is strong in this matchup. But only way to find out is to watch Game 2, so here we go. Gastrodon is here with Grookey against Indeedee and Crawdaunt. We know Grookey will win speed control. We can expect like a knockoff, I would think, from Crawdaunt. It's not going to click a water attack into Gastrodon. It goes right for the Grass Terra. Oh, is it going to be Grass Terra Blast into Gastrodon? It is. It one-shots Gastrodon with Grass Terra Blast. So forget anything I said about Gastrodon being an answer to Crawdaunt, as the coverage Terra Blast to pick up a threat, which did not work out for Drago in Game 1, works out very nicely for the Lancers in Game 2. Gastrodon being gone immediately is, I think, huge. Gastrodon was seemed like kind of a key adjustment between games. Tyranitar coming in here, but it's definitely threatened by this Crawdaunt, especially with Indeedee clicking Follow Me. We see Probopass as their last Pokemon. I mean, I got spoilers, I knew it was coming, but we'll see what it does. Tyranitar back out to Grookey. Tyranitar under a lot of pressure here. We see the Terra Grass Probopass going right for Meteor Beam with the Power Herb, KOing Indeedee. Okay, special attack boosting Probopass. Interesting. Bulky Pokemon, hard to take down. Could have... I'll talk about its ability later. And the combination of Fake Out and Earth Power picks up the Excadrill. Excadrill not able to position itself so well this time, as Hippowdon is forced in next to Crawdaunt. Crawdaunt taking a lot from that U-turn. Of course, it hasn't turned off its bug weakness. Knockoff, but Probopass has no item, so it doesn't take that much. And now Crawdaunt drops to Probopass. And, I mean, Tyranitar hasn't been able to do a whole lot in its own right in this game, but all it's needed to do is enable its teammates, and it's delivered on that. Hippowdon will protect around the Meteor Beam here, but Probopass still has the special attack boost from the Meteor Beam. It can just use that with a different attack. Yeah, that Flash Cannon doing quite a bit to Hippowdon, getting the drop, but I don't even know that that's going to matter. And the high horsepower to the Grass Terra. It's not doing it. Tyranitar setting the sand back up here. Hippowdon can protect, but yeah, that's it. So, the Probopass sweep there. After the really cool aggressive play with the Crawdaunt took out Gastrodon, there just was no answer to this guy after that. And as we can see here, its abilities are Sturdy, Magnet Pull, and Sand Force. And I don't know if you noticed, I only noticed late there, but it was not taking sand damage while the sand was up. So I think Sand Force, like Sand Veil, must give it a sand immunity. But it definitely was running Sand Force. That's one of the spoilers that I have. So getting a boost to all three of these attacks that we see here, in addition to the Meteor Beam boost, and suddenly Probopass, a kind of bulky Pokemon with no obvious thing to do in most games, I would think, is kind of a fearsome, bulky special attacker that the Lancers just could not handle here, especially losing the Excadrill to the Fake Out Earth Power combo. I'm just gonna... I don't think I've ever done 2 Bulbapedia breaks before, but just gonna confirm. Yeah, they take no damage from Sandstorm, so we do know, even if we didn't have spoilers, we would know that it has Sand Force at this point, because it was not taking sand damage when it was a grass type. Really cool plays on both sides so far, as we go now to Game 3. And we see Comfey lead with Grookey against Indeedee and Excadrill, so we're kind of back to the Game 1 techs so far at face value. Excadrill will flinch thanks to Grookey getting terrain control, and it takes a Charm from Comfey. So yeah, there were a lot more answers to the Excadrill than just the Terra-fighting Corviknight in this set. As Excadrill is forced out there, we see... we see double crabs. I'm pretty sure Crawdaunt is not a crab, but Crabominable is. And we see our Pinsir buddies here next to each other. I don't know what the Crabominable is going to do. I mean, it could threaten an Ice attack and Trick Room into the Probopass after it Terrastalizes, or a fighting attack before. But Comfey's back in. Comfey, of course, able to help keep its partner healthy, especially in grassy terrain. We might just be in an unbreakable Probopass situation here. The Crabominable has not turned its rock weakness off with the Terra. Terra Flying still weak to rock. Actually, it's not weak to rock in the first place because it has the fighting type resistance. It's made itself weak to rock by Terrastalizing, but the Meteor Beam goes into the other slot, so it gets away with it for now. But it does just go for an Ice Punch into a Probopass that does not Terrastalize, so it's resisted. Lancer's guessing wrong, having to switch Crabominable out after the Charm. Crawdaunt taking a lot from that Earth Power. Doing a fair bit with that Crabhammer crit, but another Charm. Of course, not a priority move from Comfey, because Comfey doesn't have Prankster. It has Triage for healing moves, but the Charm not stopped by the Psychic Terrain. Probopass stacking boosts with the Meteor Beam. Now it has gone for the Terra. And yeah, Comfey just nerfing... As the other side only has physical attackers, unless you count Indeedee, Comfey nerfing them really nicely. The Fake Out into Indeedee is interesting here. But the Probopass and Trick Room maybe thinking it could just KO the Crabominable. It does not do that, and in fact it gets frozen by an Ice Punch. So there is a chance to stop its momentum here for the Lancers, but it thaws immediately. Okay. Indeedee, follow me. They had another chance to KO the Probopass here, but maybe thinking it would still stay frozen. They go for the attack into Grookey instead with the Crabominable. But that means Probopass has another chance. Although they do still have Follow Me available on Indeedee. But Grookey pivots out. Comfey gets in. It can heal Probopass here, and it does. No way. 1 turn freeze. Yeah, okay. They thought they had they thought they were safe against the frozen Probopass, but through sheer force of will, I guess, it just broke through. And I don't know that they can stop it this time either. Excadrill just drop into an Earth Power in the Trick Room there. Probopass finally is KO'd, but look at how much it did before it went down. And now we've got Terra Flying Crabominable against Comfey and Tyranitar. The Charm, for good measure. Tyranitar taking a Drain Punch after the Charm and the Crabominable loses Punching Glove. Crabominable, with a huge chance to redeem itself in my eyes here, just not delivering. Tyranitar tanks that Drain Punch after the Charm and the knockoff. Comfey does just enough here to keep its teammates healthy. And yeah, the Game 1 mode with the Terra fighting Corviknight feels really unnecessary now. Although, I think Comfey dropped early in that game, right? So they didn't have the Charm available after Comfey was KO'd quickly, which maybe is why they went aggressive with the Corviknight. I guess that was probably the right way to play that game with the Pokemon that they brought. But then they found a couple of better modes after that, as Drago's Strongest Warrior, using a relatively obscure Pokemon that you don't think about too much as a competitive player. just blast through the opposing team. This has been a good week for cool Pokemon like Hitmonlee and Probopass, and Drago's Strongest Warrior take this win over the Lightning Lancers. And we still have more sets to get through. Up next is Big Time Sandrush versus the Mobile Mudkips. I'm going to take a sip of my drink before I dive into this one. Big Time Sandrush, once again, bringing Flamigo with its possible stat-boosting buddies. The Ice Cube probably running Belly Drum. The Superior might be running, well, probably running Leaf Storm, but you don't boost Flamigo's special attack. Might be running Stellar Terra Blast, maybe not. And then we see just a really well-balanced core with Superior, Palmet, Tauros, and Volcarona. On the Mudkips side, Talonflame Garchomp duo is back. Once again, they have two ground types paired with Talonflame, this time in Garchomp and Swampert. Swampert able to give them some cover into Volcarona and Palmet, so that does seem to make a lot of sense here. Once again, able to go for ground spam if they want, but it's going to be hard to do that into Ice Cube, which is protected once by its Ice Face, Flamigo, which is immune to Earthquake, although then it has to watch out for Brave Bird from Talonflame, and of course Superior, which resists the Earthquake, but also is threatened by Talonflame. Hey, that's why that combo is good, right? And then we see some favorites like Scizor, Gardevoir, and Ampharos, but let's just get in and see how they use them. Tauros and Palmet leading against Talonflame and Ampharos. Love to see that Pokemon here. The Talonflame is just protecting turn 1, but the Ampharos gets faked out, so not a whole lot happening this turn as Tauros uses Raging Bull into the Protect. We see the Terra Steel Tauros immediately. Really looking to KO that Talonflame, I think. As Mudkips get Tailwind up, the Tauros gets a coaching from Palmet, and I guessed wrong as it close combats into the Ampharos slot. Hits Gardevoir in front instead, so it doesn't do too much. Ampharos back in, Volcarona in. Robbie really trying to get the Tauros going, but also positioning somewhat carefully here. Volcarona with the Rage Powder takes a Power Gem and actually does survive, but it will drop to Gardevoir's Mystical Fire here. But Tauros gets a chance to KO Gardevoir with the Raging Bull. Talonflame is in. Last turn of Tailwind. Takes the Tauros out with a Flare Blitz. Is the Ampharos Choice locked into Power Gem? Because he used Power Gem into a Fighting type just now. And then it gets frozen by Ice Punch. Frozen by an Ice Punch crit. Flamigo comes in. We do see Co-Star, but there's nothing for it to copy. As Ampharos actually takes the Mach Punch, will it stay frozen? It does. And we see the Flamigo KO the Talonflame with Brave Bird before Talonflame can move. So, Scarf Flamigo, I would think. Which makes a lot of sense if you can set up Belly Drum Ice Cube. Scarf Flamigo just goes nuts then with the +6 attack. Scizor will KO Flamigo back with a Bullet Punch. But Ampharos stays frozen, and Palmet's coaching goes nowhere. I guess not anticipating that Flamigo would be KO'd that turn. Terra Steel Scizor does a lot of damage to Palmet with the Bullet Punch. Takes that Mach Punch pretty well. And the Mudkips have taken game 1. And honestly, it's a little hard for me to even keep track of what happened back there. These teams were just trading blows like crazy. The Flamigo KOing the Talonflame was pretty cool. Flamigo, again, I think showing the Choice Scarf there. But then the Scizor's Bullet Punch did so much damage to clean up the endgame once Volcarona was down with the Power Gem, Mystical Fire double up, and the Steel Tauros tried to get going in the early game, but then that also gave the Mudkips a chance to KO it relatively early. And yeah, Scizor Bullet Punch cleaned up really nicely from there. I guess that was kind of the key to this game. So I'm sure Robbie will play the Tauros and Volcarona differently in game 2. But let's see. We see Superior leading now with Tauros, okay, against Talonflame and Garchomp. Garchomp will switch right out. This isn't a great position for it. We see the Scizor come in early this time and get paralyzed for its trouble. This time Tauros does get the early KO into the Talonflame. Talonflame allowing itself to take the Raging Bull, but setting up Tailwind. And Gardevoir and Superior seem to threaten Robbie's Pokemon pretty well here. We see the double Protect to stall out a turn of Tailwind on the Thunderbolt and U-turn. Palmet coming in. I wasn't paying attention to whether the Gardevoir is choice locked. It may be. We see that it's not Volt Absorb Palmet. What are Palmet's other abilities? Okay, so it has either Natural Cure or Iron Fist. It is not Stellar Superior, as we see the Fairy Terra. And it starts setting up with Leaf Storm. Scizor takes the full para. Of course, Scizor could be very threatening into this Fairy Superior, as we saw the Bullet Punch do a ton of damage last game, but it's forced out here as Gardevoir will drop to the Leaf Storm and the double up. Scizor coming in now, takes an Intimidate from Tauros, as Superior protects around the Bullet Punch. Garchomp's Scale Shot into Tauros is interesting. That'll give Garchomp some speed control, of course, here. And we see Flamigo come in. It copies the +4 special attack, but Flamigo's special move pool is really sad. I don't know that they're going to do anything with it, but let's see. Scizor takes another really unfortunate full para, as Superior would probably have been KO'd this turn otherwise, or maybe they would have targeted Flamigo. Either way, Scizor could have done a ton of damage with the Terra Steel Bullet Punch. The full para hitting at a really bad time for the Mudkips. Superior striking back by missing a Leaf Storm, though. And another full para on the Scizor. Garchomp is wearing Superior down. We do see Flamigo just go for close combat, and I think it's probably locked in. So no, there's not some special tech here using that boosted special attack. And because I've seen Flamigo's move pool, special move pool, I'm not surprised. And yeah, Robbie pointing out here, that's crazy bad luck. The Scizor, I think, could have turned the game around, but 2 consecutive full paras and 3 total in this game against boosted Superior and I think Scarf Flamigo. He's just giving up way too much momentum. But the Mudkips have looked really strong so far in this set, so let's see if they can bounce back in Game 3 as we see Tauros lead once again, this time next to Volcarona against Gardevoir and Ampharos. I've really been enjoying these really well-balanced teams on both sides of this set, by the way. I just wanted to pause it to say that. This has been a very cool one to watch, even as I feel like I haven't always captured the nuances of what's going on. But Volcarona going for the Water Terra in front of Ampharos is interesting. Tauros protects on the Volt Switch, and Mystical Fire double up. Volcarona setting Tailwind, so Robbie had his own Tailwind all this time. Tauros lands a big attack at Ampharos. It's actually a double up, so that'll be KO'd, and they don't have to worry about its electric attacks threatening their 2 water types here. Gardevoir nerfing Volcarona with Mystical Fire, taking with a Fiery Dance boost. And we see the Smart Strike Tauros do a ton of damage. Whoa, hold on. We see the Smart Strike Tauros do a ton of damage to the Gardevoir. So that's interesting. But then Volcarona just wiping out Scizor with the Fiery Dance. Was there not another Pokemon that could come in here? I guess if they have Talonflame in the back, then there's really not much to stop Volcarona, especially when Tauros reveals the Smart Strike there. But, like, if you have Garchomp or Swampert, you probably want to preserve the Scizor, right? But the Scizor, I guess we'll see what's in the back, because the Scizor just gets no chance to get comfortable in this game, as it is Talonflame. So the Terra Water Volcarona being hard for this composition to deal with, gets his chance to just one-shot Scizor with a Fiery Dance. And Scizor being kind of the swing Pokemon so far in this set, being able to win the game with those strong Bullet Punches in Game 1, and then probably losing the game to the full paras in Game 2. This time Robbie leads to neutralize it, and it pays off. And that's it. Pretty quick defeat for the Mudkips in Game 3, but if they get some different luck in Game 2, this whole set probably is scored very differently in the end. I don't think you can feel... I mean, I'm sure you do feel bad about that loss if you're the Mudkips, but I think they played this really well. And sometimes Pokemon is a cruel game. Judging by the number of replays I have open, I think there are probably 2 sets left to get through, though I haven't been keeping count. We are going to start off here with Ceaseless Samurotts versus Arctic Articunos. The Samurotts, once again, bringing the duo of Kilowattrel and Farigiraf for flexible speed control, as well as cool Pokemon like Hydrapple and Samurott. And the Articunos, with their new Chandelure, and with Charjabug, of course, Charjabug having the ability Battery, I think? Yep, Battery, which boosts his teammates' special attacks. It means that Electrode, Ursaluna, and Chandelure are all going to hit harder next to Charjabug this set, and also Goodra, assuming they're running a special set, which I think they have been doing with it so far. And then the Tauros can help cover for the weaknesses of those Pokemon. So a lot of different ways that both sides can play this, but I expect to see a lot of strong special attacks being thrown off by the Articunos for sure. And of course, this is the week that they picked up Chandelure in that team trade with the Chatots, so good time to throw off strong special attacks when Chandelure is one of your newest team members. Again, though, just like we didn't see the Skarmory this week, we also don't see the Venomoth, but maybe before the season is over. Low Kicks and Toxicroak leading against Chandelure and Electrode. Electrode getting right out of there, probably not wanting to take a first impression. As Chandelure goes straight for the Fire Terra, Goodra, I think, will tank a first impression pretty well if it's coming out. And yeah, Chandelure turning off its Dark weakness and probably about to throw a big boosted Heat Wave that knocks both these Pokemon down to their Focus Sashes or KOs them or whatever. Chandelure also not having to worry about the Fake Out from Toxicroak because, of course, it was a Ghost type before the Terra. If you're the Samurotts, you probably don't anticipate the Terra here. Instead, Goodra takes the Fake Out, and it does get poisoned. And it takes a big first impression. That actually did a lot. Heat Wave missing Low Kicks and not KOing Toxicroak, so not quite as impressive as I was hyping it up to be, but you know, a solid first turn from the Chandelure apart from being a little unlucky. And here Farigiraf pivots in and takes a bunch of damage and gets frozen. What a crazy week. As Toxicroak drops the Heat Wave here. The Heat Wave does thaw the Farigiraf. I believe if you hit a frozen Pokemon with a fire attack, that thaws it. But it doesn't matter as it gets KO'd by Goodra's Ice Beam here. So we are just seeing the special attack spam like I talked about. Trico apologizing for the luck there with the Ice Beam, but I mean, missing, you know, Low Kicks dodging the Heat Wave turn 1 was some good luck for Panda, so there's been some of that on both sides. And the Chandelure has been so hard to deal with so far. The Terra Dragon Hydrapple will have a go at it though. Low Kicks, no Focus Sash, just gets wiped out. But Hydrapple is able to hit back, but Trico still has Electrode and another Pokemon in the back. And it doesn't matter as Goodra survives just long enough to KO the Hydrapple with Draco Meteor. So yeah, okay, a little bit of luck with the freeze, although again, there was also the Heat Wave dodge, but special spam from the Terrifier Chandelure did just rip through the Samurotts team there. And honestly, some of the rolls were iffy enough that it might be worthwhile to bring Charjabug next to Chandelure in Game 2, and then Chandelure might really run through this team. Although, if you're Panda, I mean, I think you definitely bring the Hydrapple again. Well, maybe you bring... What I really mean is I think you definitely bring Samurott to Game 2. And that makes Chandelure's life a little harder. Although the Electrode and Charjabug can probably help out with that in a big way. And in any case, here's Game 2. Kilowattrel leading with Samurott against Chandelure and Charjabug. So they both pretty much did exactly what I suggested. And unless the Chandelure has a trick up its sleeve, this should offer Panda some relief. Just getting Tailwind from Kilowattrel is also going to be big, as the Chandelure is going to be less free to spam attacks into slower Pokemon. It goes right for Heat Wave. I guess it's Scarf Chandelure if it went before Kilowattrel. I probably should have figured that out in Game 1 when it was going before Toxicroak and stuff. But Scarf Chandelure doesn't care, just going for it. Misses the Heat Wave into Samurott, but does knock Kilowattrel down to its Sash. Tailwind goes up, and Chandelure drops an Aqua Cutter. So the Articunos will have to find something else to do here. As we see Sticky Web from the Charjabug. Wow, you don't see that move very often in doubles. At least in VGC-style gameplay. Sticky Web, so even after the Tailwind, if Hydrapple or Toxicroak or anything comes in, it's going to have its speed dropped. And the Goodra comes in now. It'll get the battery boost from Charjabug. Samurott protecting, but its own Tailwind is going away here as Charjabug KOs the Kilowattrel. Once those last two turns of Tailwind are up, the Tailwind is not coming back. And again, Toxicroak gets its speed dropped on the Sticky Web. If Samurott ever switches out, it's going to take a speed drop when it comes back in. We see Tauros this time as the last Pokemon for the Articunos. Protecting Goodra from those attacks, stalling out the Tailwind some more. Charjabug has Electro Web to also further nerf the opponent's speed. And Samurott does switch out, so it's never getting back in without a speed drop. Low Kicks is here. We see Terra Dragon Tauros go right for an Outrage that KOs Toxicroak. Of course, with Outrage, you can't choose your target. I don't know whether Toxicroak was the preferred target there. My guess is it probably was, because Low Kicks now cannot switch out. And of course, you can't use First Impression outside of your first turn on the field. And First Impression is kind of what Low-Kicks does best. In any case, huge outrage there. Samurotts in. No Hydrapple this game. Not that it would want to take an outrage. Outrage into the correct target. The Samurott protects, but the outrage goes into the Low-Kicks. And Samurott is all alone now. At -1 speed, we see the Fire Terra. It's going to drop to an outrage. Even if it didn't, Goodra would get back in. Presumably next to Charge-a-Bug, because I don't think Samurott is going to waste his time KOing Charge-a-Bug here. And just overwhelming offense from Reckless Trico. I'm sure this will be a fun one to watch on Reckless Trico's own channel, which is called Reckless Trico. Bringing in the Chandelure for a much stronger attacker than the Sinistcha was ever going to be, and just bringing overwhelming offense to its debut set. You love to see this stuff. Maybe not so much if you're a Ceaseless Samurotts fan, but hey, it's a lot of exciting sets this week. And this was certainly one with the Goodra and the Tauros and the Chandelure putting in a ton of work. And last set for the week, Varsity Farmboys versus Melodic Miraidon. No doubt more fireworks here. Although, as these are two of the stronger teams in the season so far. Although the Farmboys bringing Blissey and Garganackle makes me question just how many fireworks we'll be getting. They do also have a possible Sun mode with Ninetales, Vileplume, and Scovillain, so we could see fast offense, we could see bulky stuff, we could see slow offense with Ursaluna. And on the Miraidon side, Ribombee here, maybe to set Tailwind, overcome Chlorophyll Boost that way. We see the duo of Sneasler and Dragapult that everyone loves so much in VGC right now, with support from Thwackey setting Grassy Terrain and going for Fake Out probably, and U-turn pivoting, with Magmar with its Follow Me able to protect them from attacks. And then the Gallade might be a serious offensive threat into both Blissey and Garganackle, and also Ursaluna, so I'm sure they're not going to make it easy. Whatever the Farmboys do to try to take control of this game, whether it's a bulky mode or a fast, disruptive mode, I'm sure that the Miraidon won't be making it easy. But we'll see what choices they make here, as it's Dragapult and Gallade against Vileplume and Ninetales. Vileplume just protecting, turn 1. So with Ninetales. You see the Dragon Darts from Dragapult, and the Sacred Sword from Gallade. Okay. Now Gallade protects, avoiding a Sludge Bomb. Dragon Dart's doing a lot of damage to both Pokemon, but not KOing anything. As Gallade also protects on the Shadow Ball. That Shadow Ball could have done a lot into Dragapult, but yeah, Farmboy's double targeting and protect there gives a lot of momentum to Think Boy and the Melodic Miraidon. As the Dragapult now is, of course, threatening a double KO with Dragon Darts, and there's nobody obvious to switch in on that other than maybe Garganackle just because it's of its bulk, but nobody especially wants to take the dragon damage here, unless there's a Terra Fairy on something. You see Magmar come in. Vileplume protects, so Ninetales will drop to the Dragon Darts. Ursaluna here is in. It can probably be bulky enough to take a Dragon Darts, but also is probably activating a Flame Orb here. Vileplume drops to the Dragon Darts. The Dragon Darts still putting out a lot of pressure, but we do see the Garganackle here. It goes right for the Ghost Terra, which is interesting. Dragapult might be able to exploit that in the late game, although not if it's KO'd this turn. If it had gotten out and back in, it could maybe have exploited the Ghost Terra. But Garganackle is pretty low, with two more fast-threatening Pokemon on the field here. Sneasler going for the Swords Dance, but Gallade targeting into the Ursaluna. Nobody picking up the KO on Garganackle, and so it gets one more turn. I thought it was going to recover, but instead it just goes right for an explosion. KOs Sneasler, knocks Gallade down to 2%. That could have been a turning point of the game, but I guess Think Boy realized the Ursaluna was just under too much pressure without any speed control on its side, which is something that I've noticed about the Farmboys team in the past, that they have this fearsome attacker in Ursaluna, but they don't have much speed control that works specifically for it. If there's one thing that I think is a weakness, and they're generally a very successful team this season, that might be it. And we see the faster fighting types on the Miraidon side taking advantage here. The Garganackle explosion play was crazy, but it just didn't quite KO the Gallade, and Gallade was able to beat Ursaluna in the end game. But yeah, I thought Garganackle was going to recover or Iron Defense there or something and be a pain to take down. Instead, just trying to go out with a bang. We do get those fireworks after all. It just falls a little bit short as we head into game 2 here. We see Gallade and Magmar lead against Ursaluna and Scovillain. And players are protecting, kind of feeling each other out, I think. We get a Fire Blast there from the Scovillain. Magmar going for Substitute. Interesting. So with both players kind of protecting and feeling each other out, Magmar taking the opportunity to make its Follow Me even more effective, as of course, if Magmar wants to just spam Follow Me, most Pokemon have to take it down before they can deal with its teammate, but the Substitute makes it take longer to do that. Of course, it also gives Magmar a chance of surviving an Earthquake from Ursaluna and continuing to support its teammate beyond that one attack. We see the Fairy Terra on Ursaluna this time, so there's an answer to the fighting types, although of course the Sneasler has a way around it, but Gallade will Sacred Sword into a Protect. Ursaluna does just throw off the Earthquake, it KOs Gallade and breaks Magmar's Substitute. Yeah, I feel like the Earthquake was a reasonably obvious play there. Maybe Think Boy thought that Farmboys would cover for a Wide Guard. But yeah, the Sacred Sword into Scovillain cost a lot of momentum there. Scovillain now able to redirect Sneasler's attack away from Ursaluna. It does drop to a Dire Claw. Oh, maybe that's what it is. They were worried about the redirection from Scovillain, and so just tried to get rid of it there. But that makes it, of course, a very smart Protect on the Scovillain side. And then Rage Powder on the next turn, opening the door for Ursaluna to claim 3 KOs. And the Dragon Darts will KO Ninetales here, but Dragapult, if it's choice, it's locked itself into Dragon Darts into a Dragon Immunity. So it's racking up damage on the Garganacl quickly, but Ursaluna showing the Throat Chop. I guess the Dragapult must not be choiced if that's the play they made. Or maybe they just didn't see a way to win this one. But yeah, the Terra Fairy Ursaluna makes a ton of sense into the 2 fighting types of the Dragapult, even though it does have to watch out for Dire Claw. But the Scovillain kind of masterfully played around the fighting types there. Was kind of the secret MVP of this game. Or co-MVP, I guess. Opening the door for Ursaluna to just sweep the whole Miraidon team. Ursaluna adjusting really well to the threats on the other side there. And I don't know how you beat that duo of Scovillain and Ursaluna. How do you beat it? I mean, you have Dragon Darts, but not if it goes Terra Fairy. I guess if it goes Terra Fairy into Dragon Darts, then both darts will hit Scovillain. You can probably KO Scovillain relatively quickly. You do again have to watch out for the timely Protect. Keep Sneasler in the back. So there's just no easy way to get around this for Think Boy. He's just going to have to play well, is what it comes down to. But I do think Sneasler kind of has to be preserved for the late game into something like that Ursaluna mode we saw last time. We see Thwackey and Gallade now against Garganacl and Scovillain. By the way, credit to the Farmboys for taking full advantage of the flexible team that they've got here. Sliding smoothly back and forth between Sun mode and Protect the Bear mode. And the Garganacl just going crazy, of course. Wrong ability, oops, is I think our answer to why the Thwackey hasn't set Grassy Terrain here. We do see it ignore Rage Powder and land a Woodhammer into Garganacl, but after the Terra it doesn't do very much. Not gonna lie, I didn't notice it was Life Orb Garganacl until now. So it just looks like a bulky mode at preview, I guess, but then it goes crazy with Explosion or Rock Slide. And it's even harder for an opposing team to stand up to Ursaluna after that. Makes sense. Obviously, they didn't line it up exactly right in Game 1, but we've seen how devastating this whole team can be in Game 2, and we see Scovillain KO the Thwackey here. And Scovillain's still at full HP as the Sneasler comes in. Probably not what you want to see if you're rooting for the Miraidon here. As there's still a Pokemon in the back for the Farmboys that I think is probably Ursaluna, and their Sun mode is getting a chance to remove its threats here. Gallade Thunder Wave into Scovillain is interesting. If nothing else, a full para could win them the game if it comes at the right time. But Sneasler dropping into the Ninetales Extra Sensory. the Farmboys still just expertly removing Ursaluna's threats before they ever have to bring Ursaluna into this game. I mean, in Game 2, they didn't even do it that way. They brought Ursaluna in early, but made the Protect and Rage Powder plays at the right times. But here, we see the Sun mode, we see the extrasensory Ninetales, we see the probably Chlorophyll Scovillain. The Ninetales has Shadow Ball too, as I recall from Game 1. So just really well engineered to remove Ursaluna's threats so that Ursaluna can win in the end game. There's the Rage Powder and the Follow Me, but Heat Wave doesn't care about Follow Me. It does, however, miss Gallade. Scovillain also carrying the Rocky Helmet, even able to do a little more damage to Gallade there when it takes the contact attack. And it survives the Sacred Sword as well. What are they talking about in chat here? Oh, the Heat Wave dodge. Yeah, well, it happens. But I mean, that's the kind of thing that the Miraidon need to win this at this point, because they've just run into an opponent who's really well prepared. Magmar will redirect Shadow Ball away from Gallade there. But Gallade, going for the KO into Ninetales, maybe worried about the Fairy Terra on Ursaluna? But Ursaluna... Oh no, they've already used the... they've already terrestrialized Garganacl. Let's go back to that last turn. Scovillain drops, Ursaluna gets in, Ninetales at 1%. I feel like Gallade has to try to just one-shot Ursaluna here. Maybe they thought Ursaluna would protect. You know what? That's a read that I might make in that position. Thinking that Ursaluna knows that I have to one-shot it, so maybe it protects, and the only way that I keep it viable position is if I KO the Ninetales while the Ursaluna is unavailable to KO. But Farmboys, once again, reading the situation just right, if that is what happened. Just going for the attack with Ursaluna, and Ursaluna coming through in a big way, winning the game, showing that I was wrong to doubt. You know what? Speed control is not everything. Ursaluna has not shown so far this season that it needs it. The Farmboys are still near the top of the standings. I think they're like 3rd place after this. Building a ton of supports into their team beyond what I thought of at a glance, and showing just what Ursaluna can do if you play the right way and remove its threats. So, great sets across the board. Really eventful week. I think the standings are going to be shaken up a little bit when I update them. There were some 2-0s and whatnot this week, but also just a lot of coaches getting really comfortable with their teams. Whether it worked out this week or not, we saw some really good play from coaches who lost as well as coaches who won. But people getting really comfortable with their teams, showing the tricks that they've been working on throughout the season. We saw expected Pokemon popping off like this Ursaluna. We saw unexpected Pokemon like Hitmonlee going crazy. I've enjoyed this week a lot. It's going to be a really fun video to look back at later. And we still have 2 more weeks of the PDL regular season before we even get to the playoffs. So there's potential for this to just keep getting even better. And of course, again, your Alaskan Absols are right there in the playoff hunt. See you next week.